Okay, so now I'm going to ask the question that everybody wants to know, and that is, how do you do it? Right? Because there's a magic sauce to it, right? Like, everybody says, how do you get a dog to bite somebody? How do you get this? How do you get that? So I can imagine it, right? But I want you to talk about it because it's so cool. And it's maybe even like a little game that some people, like what you were saying, go find mom, right? How do you start the dog off? Dog's got great toy drive.
Yep.
Loves his tennis ball. So now I'm going to teach Rover to go find a live person.
Okay.
What's the process?
Oh gosh, I could talk all day about
Good.
this.
Good.
All right. Get my chair here.
Because we're going to teach Dwayne how to do it. Turn my mic up a little bit and we'll fix everything will be fixed with a little bit more volume. Anyway, we've got Janet here helping me out. We've got some ladies here from an amazing organization called we're going to call it Search Dog Foundation because I know I was already schooled on the right way to say that. And we're going to talk about really the important things dogs do, right? I mean, that's one of the things that I want to address and differentiate between, because I think you guys get a lot of dogs that other people couldn't keep. That was, I think, really high drive dog people get these great pets and then they turn out to be just a disaster. They're just like full of drive and full of personality. And nobody knows, check. I know what's going on. It's not the microphone that's bad. It's the cable for the headphone. So I'm actually speaking perfectly, right?
Yep.
Everything sounds great. Like you guys saying you can hear me, but I'm saying I can't hear myself. I need to replace this cable. So I'm telling my beautiful wife, who's sitting right there, that we need to get cable because she is my mind and my soul. So thank you for that. Anyway, so we're good talk. We've restarted this like 4 or 5 times and I look very amateurish with my technology skills. But what I really want to talk about is this need for these dogs, right? Because I think these dogs, there's a dog for every home, almost every home, or every dog. But sometimes dogs are too much. And what I want to really start with is, before we jump into the organization, which I really want to talk about because it's an amazing organization that I've known about for at least 10 years. Mandy, I want you to talk about the idea of getting these dogs that are just so insane in drive, right? But they're not aggressive. They're just crazy. And a lot of people go, oh, the dog's out of control. Why do you pick those dogs?
Yeah, great. It's a great question. So, we primarily get our dogs from shelters and rescues. And so what we're looking for in these types of working dogs are lots of drive, toy possession, bold, confident, not afraid of tactile nerve issues, nothing like that. Very good in different environments. And a lot of times these dogs end up in shelters because they don't make good pets. People don't know how to channel that energy properly. And so the dogs in homes tend to not get what they need, and they end up becoming frustrated and bored, and then destructive behaviors happen, and people don't know how to handle that or deal with that, so they're relinquished to the shelters. And in turn, we are looking for that type of dog. That is the type of dog that we want to be able to channel that energy into something that is good, which is search and rescue work.
So I know a lot of people always say, as soon as they see a dog that's it's this or it's that, it'd be a great service dog, right? It'd be a great search and rescue dog because it's out of control. But there are certain tests you look for. And I remember I read through the requirements for your test back when I was in Ventura running the program there. It's quite specific. Like, it's an insane toy drive. And so a lot of times we see dogs that are pets that are so driven for those toys that we just don't know what to do with him. Like, he's tearing apart everything. He's obsessive. He's OCD. And that OCD thing is sometimes not even enough. I sent you guys a dog, I think it was a German Shepherd, that wasn't enough. It didn't have enough of a drive for it. Talk about that excessive drive that you really like to have in these dogs.
Sure, yeah. So if you can think about the picture of an urban search and rescue dog, we need these dogs to be able to arrive in any environment with lots of distraction and things going on, and have the desire to work, which is really, we call it work, but it's really fun for them. It's fun for the dogs. They're doing something that they love. And so we need the dogs to have such a high level of possession and toy drive that they can overcome very difficult environments and very, very difficult search problems. So what we look for is dogs that are socially stable, as well as possessive of their toy. We want to see retrieves. We want to see how fast and deliberate or desperate they are for their toy. We want to see if they're going to continue to hunt for a toy. If it's hidden, they don't know where it is. Are they going to give up if they can't find their toy? Or are they going to keep going and looking for it, knowing that it could potentially be out there? And that's the kind of dog we're looking for. They don't give up. They want to work. We actually have to stop them from working because they will continue.
I love that.
Yeah.
So are there specific breeds that are better?
That's a really good question. So working with shelter dogs, we get a lot of mixed breeds in there. So the primary breeds that we tend to see that work well for this type of work are Labrador retrievers, golden retrievers, German shepherds, Belgian Malinois, we get some pointers, and then mixes of all of those types of dogs. We get some herding dogs as well.
Do you think herding dogs
Yep.
are usually best for that?
We do get some herding dogs. Sometimes they're a little visual, so we have to decipher, are they able to turn on their nose when we need them to? And so, we definitely have successful border collie mixes and herding breed mixes as well.
So when and there's a big difference. I mean, I've trained scent work and stuff like that, but when you're talking about cadaver, you're dealing mostly with cadaver stuff, right?
We do, primarily live finds. So
okay.
We're looking for live people buried in rubble and disasters.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm incorrect. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but you do cadaver as well, or no?
We do.
You do. Okay.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about the search for a live find versus a cadaver.
Okay, that's a really good question. I could talk forever.
I got a lot of good questions.
Yeah.
I'm full of good questions, just so you know.
It's a great question. Live find. So what we are looking for in detecting live humans in rubble, disaster rubble. So if you think about the way our search dogs are trained, they're not trained to find live people. They're trained to find the strongest source of odor coming from live people. So if you can think about somebody that's buried in an earthquake, a building collapse, the dog may not be able to get right on top of where that person is, but there's odor coming off of that person, skin rafts that the dogs are able to detect, and that can filter up through channels and different ways through broken rubble, broken materials, and the dogs are taught to have a trained final response to bark at where they find strongest source of odor, and then we have our search team go in, and not our search team, but on the task force, they have their search team go in and delayer, trying to find where that person potentially could be based off where the dog indicated on odor.
Okay. So they're always doing an active alert, right?
Yes, it's an active alert.
Okay.
Yep.
But if you were training, and again, I'm going to just jump around a little bit, when you're training for a cadaver,
Yep.
Is that still an active alert?
It is still active, and I'll get to why that is in a second.
I really want to know that. It's fascinating.
Okay, well then I'll go there.
Yeah.
So the reason whether it's cadaver or live find, the reason that we need an active bark alert is because we're dealing with disasters. It may not be safe for us as handlers to go in to the disaster scene, but our dogs, they're much more agile than we are. They have 4-wheel drive, they can move, they're trained to be really agile, so they can get in places that we cannot. So if you can envision a dog up on a rubble pile or in a building or in a rubble pile, we can't see the dog. So if the dog didn't have an active alert, we wouldn't know they were indicating. So
that's interesting. So, and are the dogs dual purpose? I mean, they do active. They'll do a live find or a cadaver.
They're separate. They are not dual purpose.
Okay.
They're single purpose.
So you'll have a cadaver dog and you'll have a live find dog.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Very, very good. Okay. So I'm going to bounce back and forth. So now the organization, right, which is what brought us here all together, was founded by a lady named Wilma, who is an amazing woman, 80-something years old, and she was a pilot, and I know she was flying not too long ago.
Yep,
right?
that's right.
So tell me a little bit about how I wanted to get Wilma in here. I really, really did, because I think she would have been such a great character, and maybe someday we'll still get her on the show. But tell me a little bit about her. Now, by the way, I'm sorry, Denise, you're the outreach coordinator?
Yeah, I'm our director of communications.
Communications, so you're going to be communicating about this. So tell me a little bit about Wilma and this amazing organization she started. How did she start? Let's start with that. How did she start?
So Wilma actually was a school teacher for many, many years. That was her career, if you will, her first one. And when she was retired, now anyone who's met Wilma realizes she will not stay retired or sitting still for very long. So that was not a great way for her to go when she was, middle-aged. So her retirement hobby, she decided, was going to be first high endurance, long distance distance horseback riding, competition level. And then she decided she wanted to train search dogs. So she started out in wilderness with her dog Topa, actually named after the Topa Topa Mountains up in Ojai. And that was a German Shepherd. And then she decided to explore disaster search. And so she started out as a handler, not really knowing where to start, not knowing if there was any trainer available to work with that could teach her that. And so she was working with various local groups. Everyone had kind of learned their own way of doing things. There was no book for it. And so she worked her way through that and eventually realized that there was a better way. Once again, knowing Wilma, very much like the dogs that we work with, very determined, very focused. Once she has that in mind, it's going to happen one way or another. So she went with her search dog Murphy to a professional trainer, learned a lot, got certified through FEMA, which that system was at the very, very beginning, infancy stages. And so she became certified federally to be able to deploy to disasters. In April of '95, the Oklahoma City bombing happened, and that was really the first major disaster that these teams were able to respond to as a system. And so she and Murphy went to Oklahoma City. They searched for many days, and unfortunately, there weren't a lot of survivors that were found, especially there were not by dogs at least. And so she came back realizing just how few resources there were for canines in particular, and that more were needed. If another disaster like that were to happen, there were not enough teams to search a disaster of that magnitude. So her mission coming home was to change that, and here we are today, fulfilling her vision of exactly that, was to create more highly trained, certified disaster search dogs that can do that job when the time comes.
Is she still active in, I'm sure she's still active. I know, having met her, I know she's still active, but is she still into watching Mandy go, Mandy, you better do this way or anything like that?
I won't let Mandy answer that, but
Right.
She is very, very active. She sits on our board, and she comes out and visits at our training center, oftentimes several times a week. And it's wonderful to see that, though, because when she came back, her vision really was to train more teams that can deploy, to build a training center that can serve them and provide them a home and a place to come back to always, so they can continue to do better and be deployment ready, and then to elevate beyond that and to better support the system that's out there so that all teams are ready to respond when needed. And her coming out to the training center as often as she still manages to, it's wonderful to see her getting to see that in action now. Sure. As our training team and our entire staff move that forward into the future.
And your center is amazing. The new place you've built in Santa Paula, right?
Yes.
Is pretty spectacular. Yeah. It's huge.
Yes, 125 acres.
125 acres.
Yeah.
And let's talk a little bit about I need to come up and do a tour and do it like a little Facebook Live or something from there. But tell me a little bit about it. Like what happens there? Like how many dogs do you house there and all that stuff?
Animal control, how can I help you?
Of the building completely collapsed.
You are looking at live pictures right now.
Rescue dogs on the scene right now.
So So, as I said, it's 125 acres of doggy Disneyland. I don't know if we're allowed to say that. Don't tell them.
Sure.
But really it is for disaster search dogs. It's everything they could want. And it's the first of its kind to be built specifically, designed specifically for dogs. A lot of training facilities across the country have been built for, urban disaster work, but not for the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some really unique components that go with that. So we have everything from, agility course and a direction and control field. We have what's called Search City, which is a disaster neighborhood prop setup that mimics a tornado or a hurricane, where the teams can not only work one smaller search scenario, we can then extend that to what they will more than likely see on an actual deployment, which again is really important and somewhat unique to the dogs. A human, you can teach them in that very small chunk and they can logically apply that when the time comes. With the dogs, we want them to experience that, and with the handlers as well, we want them to experience with their dogs on our training center site prior to stepping off that plane or off that bus at a disaster. And so that's really the uniqueness of that training facility. And then of course, we have our train wreck prop, which is pretty unique to our
real
campus.
train?
Yeah, well, a former train.
Well, yeah, of course.
Yes, we have 3 train cars on site that are set up to be like they had been in a disaster of some sort and a collapsed freeway as well. And again, they're set up to be separate scenarios if need be, or they can be a much lengthier search, so you get that duration in there for the dogs.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. So I'm going to bounce over to Mandy, because people always say, and I have a huge problem with this, dogs shouldn't be working dogs. We're using them. It's all the nutty animal rights people, which I call on their stuff. I think that dogs love to work. And I think the people who really hurt these dogs a lot are the ones who say, oh, well, dogs shouldn't be working. They've got their dogs at home eating ice cream, watching Oprah Winfrey, and they're overweight, they're in grotesque health, and they're just constantly coddling these dogs. What I want to talk to here is this issue of these dogs, first of all, didn't make it in the home because they have too much drive. But they're so passionate about what they do, right? When I see dogs working, police dogs, search dogs, any dog working, even guide dogs, this is what they were bred to do. And just talk to that for a little bit, because I think it's so important that we see that this is giving the animal what the animal was born to do.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, our dogs are, they're happy. They're happy to be working. And again, we say working, but for them, it's fun. It's a game for them. Many people in their home play hide and seek with their dogs. It's basically that kind of game on a much bigger scale. And the dogs they desire the work. They need to do something with that energy, and they need to channel it. And a lot of times when we get the dogs from the shelters, they haven't been given what they need to be happy in life. So they're not happy, right? They're not happy. But through our training process, they come out, they start connecting with us as humans. We show them the right path and how to gain access to their toys and have fun and play. And our whole training program is based on play and relationship. That's how we start. So they learn right off the bat when they come to us that this is a really great place and this is a super fun place. And through the training process, they learn how to learn and they thrive. And our dogs, they're athletes as well. So you were talking about, a lot of dogs at homes tend to be out of shape, and that causes problems down the road.
Sure.
And our dogs are actually athletes. So in addition to all of their training that they get for search work, they also have a very vigorous fitness routine, which is based in fun as well. So we keep these dogs in tip-top shape, and we monitor them all day long. So
right.
They're happy dogs.
Everybody's going to ask this question. How did you learn this? Did you hang out with Wilma and get her to show you stuff, or because I'm sure you were a dog trainer before, right?
Yeah.
So how did you put the piece in from being a dog trainer, obviously a very competent dog trainer, to this? Because this is such a specialized thing.
Yeah. It's been a journey, and I feel very, very thankful that I'm where I'm at. So how my path started, like many dog trainers, I had a problem dog, years and years ago. She was incredibly dog aggressive. And so I was not going to give up on her. I adopted her and found this out the day I adopted her. And so I sought out help myself from professionals in the area that I lived. And through that process, fell in love. I mean, I'd always had dogs and work dogs and things like that. But dealing with behavior modification kind of became my heart and soul. And so working in shelters, working with people that have problem dogs, that was definitely what gave me my purpose in life. Working through that problem and then working with other people's pet dogs and behavior modification, working with shelters. I started my own business and through that did some agility work and then started using agility to help people with their dogs that had problem dogs. So not competition, but for behavior modification and outlet basically. And so that kind of became my focus for people and their dogs. And I had known about the Search Dog Foundation. I actually grew up here in Ventura County. So I was living in the Bay Area at the time. And I literally saw an ad for a canine trainer position at Search Dog, and I jumped on it, and my husband and I sold our house like a month later, and here I've been at Search Dog now for 4 years, and I'm the canine training manager. Wow. So it's been a road, and I'm very thankful. So.
I mean, I couldn't imagine. I mean, if you're a dog trainer, like besides, I mean, I would want to do the police dog thing, but besides, like I can't imagine anything better, more rewarding than what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, what a cool job.
It's super cool.
Like, is it even a job?
It's not. It's
right.
It's funny.
Don't say anything because you're not going to get paid.
No. Denise and I were actually just having this conversation earlier. It's a lifestyle. It really is a lifestyle. I mean, even when I'm not physically at work, I'm working dogs and I'm working my own dogs and thinking about the dogs at work, and it's not work. It's a lifestyle.
You have a dog?
I have 3 dogs.
Okay, you can have 3 in Ventura. I think you can have 5 in Ventura. I think it's different.
Okay, I'm good. I have 3.
We're only allowed to have 3 here. We only have 3.
Got it.
The 2 look alike, but tell me about your dog. Tell me like what because everybody has their it dog, right? I mean, but my dogs are. I mean, they're it for me. So. Tell me like how you go from going from your house and I love my little dog. I love my little dog to, okay, we're going to go work now. Okay, let's go. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. How do you turn that switch from one place to the other?
With my current dogs?
Yeah.
So, I have 3 dogs. I have a pet Labrador who likes to just go on walks and hang out, and he's a nice boy. And then I've got a certified human remains detection dog. I'm on the local Ventura County task force, volunteer with the fire department there. So he's work. But in the house, it's chill time. So when we go out of the house and I give him his start button, are you ready? He's ready to go. So he's a lot of fun. He's about 4 years old. And I also have a little black Labrador puppy who's about 9 months old that I'm training for live find search work as well. So it's contextual, but they are always ready to go. Teaching them to calm down and just kind of hang out in the house has been the challenge. So
that's a challenge for all of us.
Yeah.
we're all facing that challenge.
Yeah.
We have a problem with Dwayne. Dwayne sometimes doesn't, and Jimmy's insane. Jimmy's crazy. Is he breathing? He's snoring. Okay, so let's talk about. I just want to bounce back and forth because, for me, my mind is racing. Like I've got a million questions I want to talk about, and let's go back to the foundation. And I don't, like I said, I think it's like a conversation with us, not really like an interrogation interview. Like I got to know this, I got to know that. At the center, right? Because I'm fascinated. It's 150 acres. It's what I want. I want to buy 150 acres and just have like a Disneyland for dogs. When the dogs first come in, like how do you get them? Do you ever buy dogs? Curiously, do you ever end up getting dogs from a breeder who does this specifically?
So we've had some that have been donated, you know, and sometimes we're able to get owner surrenders before they drop them off at the shelter or something like that. But we're open to whichever way they come. We obviously are very focused on rescue to rescuer and the dogs coming from the shelter or wherever it may be. But absolutely, if they have what we need, that innate drive that we're talking about, we wanted to see them and we want to evaluate them. And, for those that don't have a home, we are able to provide that. And it really is, and Mandy can probably speak more to this than even I do, but it's very much kind of a home environment for them with our family there on campus. And
they live there.
They live there, during training and during their initial training, they live there. And as Mandy mentioned, when they kind of come through the gate, they oftentimes don't connect with humans anymore, especially if they've come from a shelter environment or just not a good environment, even at a home. But you start to see them through the training and through the play. You really start to see them develop that relationship almost immediately. I am not a trainer, but I get to see a lot of it, thankfully. But watching that happen.
But do you ever want to be a trainer?
I don't know. Mandy and I talk quite a bit. I don't know if I'm up for that, but
Okay.
I enjoy watching it.
Okay.
And I've learned, quite a bit in, almost 13 years of
Do you have
being
a dog
there,
too?
but I do. I
Okay,
have
good.
two. They are certainly not working dogs,
Okay.
nor would I ever wish that on Mandy or anyone else.
Right.
But it's really neat to watch these dogs build that relationship with someone that they've never met. But through that training, they start to really, you see all of that insecurity start to melt away, and they start to really realize what they can do. And I realize I'm really humanizing the dog, but you see this start to happen. You see that spark start.
I don't think that's humanizing
It's-
them. I mean, I think it's really
Yeah.
showing. I mean, it's their individual thing coming out. You're not saying they'd
Exactly.
rather watch TV.
That's exactly
Right.
it. And you start to see that they were meant for it. To
Yeah.
what you were asking, they were meant to do this. And not all of them are. Not all of them have everything that it takes. And we would never ask a dog to do that if they kind of show us that that's not it. But there's almost always a place somewhere for one of these dogs that we get to see. And I just wanted to mention Paul, who is, your working canine who's certified, is a lifetime care dog, which means he didn't make
Paul?
it in our Live Find program. Paul,
Love that name.
Yes. And so
Cool.
he then was up for adoption. And I mean, he found one of the best homes he maybe possibly could have.
Right.
But, Mandy said, I think that he has the potential to work in a different capacity. And he is doing phenomenally well. And it's amazing to see them go through that process. And it all happens on our campus. And of course, they go off campus as well. But to see that happen, it's a really special place. And yes, obviously we're all there because it is technically a job, but really it is a life. It is an amazing phenomenon that happens.
So what happens to those dogs when they drop out? They're okay. Mandy made the decision. This one's not cut out for it. So what happens to them then? I know you don't put
Yeah.
them back in the shelter. That I
No.
know, and I think that's super cool because you put
Yeah.
so much work into them.
Exactly.
But let's take two schools of thought on this. One is the dog is just too much.
Right.
And I know sometimes when dogs go into too much drive, then you're dealing with dog reactivity because the frustration, the prey drive level goes up and then they redirect. But let's just take a dog that's just kind of high in drive, but it's just too over the top. He's just blowing past things. He's just over the top.
Yeah.
What happens to that dog compared to the dog who's too low in drive? Just can't get it.
So I feel like he's hit the nail on the head, but initially, the training team already has worked with them significantly and has a really good feel for them. And we do say once rescued, they never have to be rescued again. They will never go back to the shelter.
Love that.
But we try and focus mostly on another working capacity of some sort, some other job that they can do. That's why they were
Like
chosen
what?
for it.
What help? What can he do?
Any type of detection work. I mean, we had a dog that's now up doing bat conservation detection work, and all sorts of things we would never imagine. But these dogs and their noses are incredible, and I don't even think we've scraped the surface of what what the possibilities are there. But to the other side of it, some of them are probably meant to be a pet. They just needed a little bit of guidance to figure out how to get there. And so Mandy can speak a lot more to that. But I mean, it's
And
kind
just
of
jump
there are
in too.
those
By the
two.
way,
Okay.
your mic's
Yeah.
on the whole time.
Exactly, go for it.
It's not. I don't have a switch where it's like, okay, you're on. I'm kind of switching topics, but I think a
Yeah.
lot of these topics, both of you guys can really attest to and talk about.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated. I wanted to help. I've been to Africa several times, and snare detection dogs, right, which is not really a complicated thing for the dogs to suss out. But they're also doing poacher tracking, right? So in Africa, that's another thing, and that's all these dogs. I mean, dogs have such an amazing skill set. So some of the dogs may go into a pet home afterwards, and some may go to maybe a different type of like maybe cell phone detection, right? Because that's kind of a lower drive. And do you find it easier for dogs where they get more marks like dope? They constantly can, like in the airport, they're always sending through a dummy with a bag of dope. Okay, boom, the dog indicates, the dog gets more of a reward. With live finds and cadavers, isn't it such an infrequent reward that these dogs need to really be able to push through harder than say a dope dog?
Yeah, I can only speak to kind of what we do at the foundation, but yeah, in their training program they get a lot of repetitions where they are successful, but then we also set up training scenarios where they're not successful, because they have to understand that even though you didn't find something, there still could be something out there
Right.
an hour later or the next day or the next day. So it's really about kind of gauging where the dog is at in its training. In the foundation part of their training, they're getting a lot of repetitions where they're successful just to build the desire for the game. And then as they progress on, we start to vary that a little bit.
So how do you get the dog to push through? And I don't really want, I do kind of want to get into the technical side of it, but not in this question. How do the dogs, like, it's got to be so hard because they're searching for hours, I would think.
We don't have them search, so they definitely get breaks, right? So
Okay.
they have periods of time where they're out there searching, and
Right.
we have a block of time set up for searching, and we're setting up scenarios, and then they'll get a break, and then we'll bring them back out. And it's really dog dependent, like where is this
Right.
dog at and its athletic ability at the moment, right?
Okay.
And in the program. And so we would have the dogs, like if I were on a deployment, I would tell my search team, my dog has a working capability in this environment. So, the environmental conditions, like how hot is it? How humid is it?
Sure.
Like that kind of thing. Maybe my dog can work for 30 minutes and then I'm going to reassess him and I'd give him a 10-minute, 30-minute break, something like that, and then bring him back out. So it's really kind of, in real life, we're kind of looking at the dog in the moment and determining, is that dog still able to work? Because the dogs want to work. It's really our job as the handler to make sure that we're advocates for the dogs and making sure that they're not pushing themselves, because they will.
Yeah.
They will.
But do they flatline? Do you think, I mean, maybe you know where to cut it,
Yes.
right? You're saying, the dog's kind of going, I'm going to stop, I'm going to pull the dog, give him a break. But some people might let the dog, let's go 5 or 10 minutes more. And at that point, the dog's like, the dog's saturated without reward. Where is that fine line between, you can't plant a fake person, right? How do you keep the dog pushing through?
So what we will then do, we'll if they're searching for a really, really, really long time and they're not finding anything, we'll set up something really simple. So like on a deployment, for example,
Okay.
The dogs are there, they're working, maybe they're not working, maybe they are working, but there's long stretch of time where they're out there with their handlers or at the boo, whatever, they're somewhere. And so to keep them motivated, we'll take a team member, hide them behind something and send the dog in, get a quick, fast alert, reward the dog, and it keeps them motivated for the game, because they think at any moment they could be out there finding something.
And I think that's such an important part of it that happens a lot. I know with the drugs and with bomb dogs, they put a false find, boom, the dog can mark on it, can get a reward. So you'll do that with a live find, and even with a cadaver, like place a piece of. Okay, got it. All right, I think that's super important to know, because that fascinated me. Like, how do you keep them pushing through?
Yeah.
That's a big piece for it. So I'm so fascinated by this. Let's do this. Dwayne can do this. Dwayne would love it. Goofy, maybe not so much.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
I have a question. You mentioned agility for behavior modification. I'd love to hear you speak about that, because I started agility with a crazy dachshund who had some behavioral issues, and the agility just changed his whole personality. So I'd love to hear you.
So let me repeat the question, because Janet, as much as I would always love to have her on my show, she refuses to be on camera. So Janet had a great point, because with Bosman, everybody knows Bosman, had some behavioral issues, and the trainer that you were using then told you to do agility to give him an outlet. So, and you mentioned using agility. That's a great question. I should have asked it. Yeah. So let's attest to that. How does that work?
Yeah. So that was a lot of the work that I did prior to working at Search Dog Foundation, but we also use it in Search Dog Foundation as well. But the idea behind getting dogs and owners or handlers involved with agility is for behavior modification. It's important because a lot of times with the dogs that have problems, their owners are only focusing on their problems, and so they're not seeing their dog as a success. Even if they love their dog, they're not upset with their dog, but we tend to focus on the negative a lot of the time. And so by giving both the owner or handler and the dog something to look forward to and to accomplish and to go, stress through agility, if the dog's stressed about something, they build some confidence there. And the owner also has a connection with their dog where they're feeling successful about something. And that starts to build the confidence and relationship between the two. For something, you focus on something outside of maybe what the problem is.
Right.
And a lot of dogs that have problems and reactivity, it's a fear-based issue, right?
Sure.
So building some confidence there in the dog itself, that it can overcome and accomplish things, but also that the handler or owner can help the dog do that, builds that trust and confidence, which in turn translates out there in the world.
Yeah,
hopefully.
confidence is everything, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So important. Okay, so now here's a question. How do you, I can't imagine somebody not wanting to donate to this organization, right? And this is not a shameless plug for you to get donations, but I think it's such an important. How could somebody not want to do that, right? So, like, how do you get what funds the organization really, and how can people become a part of it? Because I think it's everybody's going to watch this and say, "Wow, I got to write a check." Right.
Well, thank you, and I hope so in some way. I feel the same way, but obviously we're a little biased being here. But the Search Dog Foundation is funded completely by donation from individuals and foundations or other organizations that provide that. So we don't accept any government funding or anything like
really?
that. It's all private. Yeah. So it's all people that are truly moved by the mission and really, I mean, let's be honest, by the dogs, the amazing dogs that we get to work with, and and it takes a lot to do that. For every dog that makes it through the program successfully, there are, upwards of probably 50 other dogs that we've looked at, evaluated, helped to a certain point to get them through. They've decided it's not for them or something like that, and then they're being placed. So for what everyone considers a success, there are many others that we actually consider successful as well.
Right.
I mean, we like to say we have 100% success rate because every dog that comes into our program is going to be successful one way or another, whether that's in live find, that could be in human remains detection, it could be in a lifetime care program of some sort, so it could be another career or in a home. And all of that is done through donations made by people that believe in those dogs and believe in what we do. So
how many make it
helps.
through? How many of, let's say you have 100 dogs, how many of them will actually end up becoming a SAR, search and rescue dog?
That is a really good question, and as we've kind of adapted our program, and Mandy can speak to that a little bit more.
One of our dogs passed gas. I'm so embarrassed because I'm just kind of embarrassed because I'm sitting here and everybody's looking at me, and I think, do they think I did it? It's horrible.
Well, Goofy's closer to you
It's not Goofy.
than it's Dwayne.
It might be Dwayne. I'm not. It's not me. I just want to be open about this. Sorry.
They want us to talk about them.
Oh my God, it's horrible. We need a fan. Okay, sorry.
No, that's
You
all
were
right.
saying- I just had to be clear on that.
No, so it's a really good question though about how many make it through, and it's obviously it's a ballpark answer.
Of course.
But I will say that over the last couple of years, our training program has shifted to much more of this play reward based, philosophy, and so things are changing, which is a good thing. It's very interesting to kind of watch. I would say out of every 100 or so that come through, if we bring about 50 of those to the campus to evaluate them, and it's about half or so of those 50 now, we probably would enter between 15 and 20 into our training program itself.
Wow. Okay.
Now, that's not to say that those others go back anywhere. They would still be placed one way or another. But of that, if it's about 15 or 20 that actually enter the training program, it's really individualized from that point with those dogs. It means that our training team has seen enough potential that these dogs want it, they have it, and they're really excited to get through that. And that doesn't mean, though, that there aren't things that we've already seen that may need to be worked on a little bit more, but we want to give them that chance. And so while it seems like a really low number from that starting number, there's a really good reason for that. And that really is if it's, my family that's out there, unfortunately in a disaster, we want to be absolutely certain that these dogs have everything it takes and are going to give it their all. And quite frankly, same with the handlers that we choose. We need to be absolutely certain that this team, this handler and dog team, are going to do their jobs and do it very well. So we are very selective about what we do. And it gives our training team a much better chance at being able to make that dog successful at this work by guiding them to that place where they can.
But I think that's a huge. If you have 100 and you end up with 15, I mean, how many people try out for the NFL or the NBA?
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
these are super athletes.
Yes, they are.
And
Absolutely.
there is a cut going on there. I had another question, but I'm going to jump around. So when you guys choose the people, right, the handlers, now, how does that work? Like, is that something where the like a fire department sends somebody or says, hey, we need a dog, or do you? How does that work? And both of you can talk to that. I don't care, but I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah, so I oversee our communications as well as our handler operations. So I get to play in both spots. But yes, we work with federal and state task forces across the country when we place the canines because we want to be sure they will go out the door. So much time and effort goes into getting them ready, but we want to be sure that they're in a place where they can actually go somewhere when help is needed. So those task forces, whether they be state or federal, will choose choose, a pool of potential candidates to be handlers. And then there's a pretty lengthy interview process as well as kind of a vetting process hands-on in terms of training to be sure that they're the right folks for the job. And as part of that, actually, we interview significant others and spouses as well, because this is not, a piece of equipment going home. It's not a new fire engine.
Yeah.
This is a dog, a living, breathing animal that is going to be living with them 24/7. And they are at home with them. They go to the fire station with them if they're a firefighter. They're with them and ready to go, when that call comes in, with a very short response time required. So we want to be absolutely sure as we can be that it's a good fit and that they are ready for that lifestyle change, because it is absolutely a lifestyle. It is not just a job. It is not, just a hobby. This is absolutely a life-changing event for all of these folks. And we just want to be clear about that and make sure that they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
Because just, at graduation, we're always celebrating, this is great. They're pairing a new partner. That's really the beginning of it. When they receive that leash to that new dog, that is the very beginning.
Yeah.
And Mandy knows all too well. That's when the real work starts.
Yeah.
Right.
And we want to be sure we have the right candidates.
Do you
for it.
train them together? Like, so I show up and then you have a dog. Is that the system? Like you have Goofy and then I show up from the Poughkeepsie police department, fire department, and then you go, hi, this is Goofy, this is Robert, we're going to be working together. How does that work?
So once the handlers are identified as handler candidates, so they're not actual handlers until they are paired with a dog
Understood.
and walk across the ceremony. But once they're identified, ideally they're able to come out to our campus and spend some time with us so we can get to know them a little bit, and also kind of start talking about how we handle dogs, how we work with dogs, and that's very much on a voluntary basis on their end. So outside of our handler course, but once we have a pool of dogs ready to go, we invite handlers to come to our campus, and there's a 2-week basically academy. It's our handler course.
Okay.
And they come out, they learn about everything. We teach. It's a mixture of lecture and field work, and we don't pair the dogs right away. We have them work different dogs. We want to see how the dog responds to each individual handler, and we really let the dogs decide what handler is going to be the best for them. So, we ultimately make that decision for who we're going to pair what dog with, what handler we're going to pair a dog with, but definitely that dynamic of watching them work different dogs is really a key piece of that, because we want to see which dog is going to light up and respond to which handler the best, because we want the best pairing to happen, because that hopefully is going to be the most successful pairing. So they are paired during that 2-week process, and then they take the dogs home. So yeah, and then they have to continue their training with their task forces, and that, like Denise mentioned, that's when the real work for them begins.
When they leave.
Yep, because now they're not on their own. Obviously, they come back. We keep tabs on them. They come back to us and train with us.
Refresher courses.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
They come back routinely, especially right when they're initially paired. We have them. We work with them pretty routinely to make sure that they're on track for certification. But yeah, we need to instill in them that, way ahead of time, that this is a lifestyle and you are going to be required to go to team trainings and so many trainings a month and continue to work this dog in the fashion that we work them to keep them moving forward in their process. So
You ever get somebody you just can't stand? Like you ever get sometimes some guy comes in with a big ego. And so, am I reading your mind?
No.
Oh, okay, good. But it's got to happen, because I've had clients where I just can't stand them. I fire them. I don't know can you do that? Can you fire them? Can you just hate them? Okay.
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Please, yeah.
I mean, she can make the call obviously on the dogs, but we work obviously very close together to make any decisions when it comes to handlers. But absolutely, there are times where that pairing just is not going to work, and that is one of the realities of a dog handler relationship, right? It's just when it's an owner coming to you, you may not be able to say this is not the right dog for you, and they may or may not listen. I'm glad, but we do. We retain ownership of the dog, actually, even once they're partnered, because we provide them free of charge to these fire departments and task forces, and so they're not paying anything. It's not costing taxpayers anything, but that is the responsibility that we have to everyone who donates and everyone who's been supporting this team or found this dog or donated this dog, whatever it may be. There's an entire force behind this dog and invested in it, and so it's our responsibility to be sure that as much as we can then they're going to be successful. And part of that is a handler or a department holding up their end of the bargain as well, which is attending that training, letting us know if there are any issues coming up that we may be able to, nip in the bud right away, versus letting them kind of go on and on and on. As I'm sure you've seen in your career, it just gets worse unless, it's brought up. And so we would much rather know that well in advance. But absolutely, there are times where it's just not going to work out. Like any relationship, knowing when to make that call can be very difficult, but ultimately that dog may be able to be paired with someone else.
Sure.
So it's in our best interest, the dog's best interest, and the handler's best interest, not to try and force something that doesn't work.
No, I think, and it's your responsibility to that animal.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, that if you don't have that, then I think that's a really sad thing. And what a great thing that your organization does to retain ownership. That means this dog is always covered. If it doesn't work out, the dog's coming back,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Now, I will say, though, that the handler gets to keep the dog for
No, of
the length
course.
of their career, and when they retire, they get to be a house pet.
That's the way it should be.
To a certain extent.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, so that's a huge piece. But and so let's the question I've got is, who are the people mostly? Is it fire departments? Is it? I mean, can an individual come and say, "I want to be a search and rescue, person"? Or do you do that? No, I don't think so.
Typically, it is a fire department. That's just the way that the USAR system in America has gone. But there are civilian handlers.
What's
that are part
USAR?
of them.
Sorry.
Urban Search and Rescue.
Okay, cool.
Sorry about that. There are a lot of acronyms in this world.
Yeah, we gotta know what they are.
So there are civilian handlers as well, but we do not train owners with their pets or with their dog that they would like to be a working dog, like this one. And so we just have found that is not necessarily something that is long term a good thing, because there's so much that comes with that already. That kind of, I don't want to call it baggage, but that history that comes with it.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the art of it. There's some science obviously involved, but the art is really who will make a good pair, and the trainers are amazing at what they do when they partner these folks with these dogs.
And how long does that take? So from the you get the dogs first, and you kind of work with the dogs individually.
Yep.
And then they've got some foundations.
Yeah.
How long does that take till from the minute they get to you? And I know it's different from each dog.
Yeah.
But everybody's going to say, okay, but how long does it take? They always say, how long till my dog is trained?
Right.
And I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So it's definitely dependent on the dog, and depending on what they need work on. So we have put dogs out. I'm trying to think, 4 or 5 months. Is there?
Yeah, there have
that's
been
the
some really quick ones.
That's real quick.
Okay.
That's real quick for all the things.
4 to 5 months until they're ready to go with a handler?
Yeah, and that's
Okay.
real quick. Like that's not our normal process,
Okay.
because they're actually required to do a lot of other. They have to know a lot of other things besides just search work before we are ready to say, okay, you can be paired with a handler.
Like high five?
Yeah, they have to high five and like roll over. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. So they about 9 months to a year, I think, is our standard kind of training.
And then it's 14 days with the handler?
It's technically 10 days, but it's 2 weeks with a weekend in there.
And then they come in, they can come back at any time.
Anytime.
And what do? They fly in, if they're from like Wyoming, they fly in and get a hotel and just, hey.
Well, so they now, with, as I said, Wilma's vision, we don't necessarily have to put them in a hotel. We have a handler's lodge on campus where they can actually stay. So they are fully immersed in this training for the duration of their time with us. And once they go home, they come back, and we kind of start to spread it out a little bit more as they become more adept at being a handler. And eventually, at the certification point, we hope that they're at the point where they come back every so often. They aren't having to come back quite as frequently, but we like to see the dogs as well. We cover healthcare coverage for the dogs for life, so we want to also evaluate them and see how they're doing just overall. So the more the merrier. We always say we want to see them coming back. We want to see them on campus.
So since they have a special certification qualification, special dogs, do they just, when they're going on a search, do they fly in the plane with the people? It
depends. Yeah, it really depends. I mean, you've done some local deployments. Some of the bigger international ones, they fly on like the C-130s through the military.
Right.
They've gone commercial a few times to different places, or sometimes it's in a van, driving however far they need to.
Yeah.
So
the reason, it's kind of a baited question, because I have such an issue with fake service dogs, right? Because here's a dog that's so, and Jan and I talk about this all the time. You get these dogs that are so highly trained, right? There's so much work put, whether it's a seeing eye dog or a search and rescue dog or anything. There's countless hours and blood, sweat, and tears, and these dogs are there to really serve. And then you get some dope who gets a fake service dog at the shelter, and it's dog aggressive, and it goes off on your dog, and it's just a real, a disaster. So. maybe we can talk to that, because I think I always tell people this, and people say, "Oh, you're biased against people with disability," and I'm not. My mom is crippled. I mean, I definitely have no issues with that, but I do have a huge issue with this interfering. And have you seen that? Have you seen, like, has there ever been an issue where a fake service or another dog just goes off on one of your dogs and can possibly destroy the dog?
I'm sure there has been at some point. I've not heard from a handler that they've had an issue in an airport or something like that. What I have heard actually more of is at a disaster site after a tornado or something, pets that were in a home that was destroyed or something, they're loose. And so that's part of why, we want to be sure our dogs are, as much as they can be, not reactive to any other dog or human. You just never know what you're going to get and what situation you'll be placed in. But I'm not aware of anything specific. I can only imagine, especially as things kind of open back up in airports and whatnot. Now there are a lot more people wanting to travel. So, I mean, we do the best we can, but I don't know if you have any more.
No, I think, I think, more what I hear about is that just actually on deployment is people's, wild dogs out there and running loose, and you use your teammates to kind of, my dog, we're searching this area. Teammates are flanking that to make sure those the rest of dogs don't get in there. Team effort for sure.
Wow, that's huge. Okay, so now I'm going to ask the question that everybody wants to know, and that is, how do you do it? Right? Because there's a magic sauce to it, right? Like, everybody says, how do you get a dog to bite somebody? How do you get this? How do you get that? So I can imagine it, right? But I want you to talk about it, because it's so cool. And it's maybe even like a little game that some people, like what you were saying, go find mom, right? How do you start the dog off? Dog's got great toy drive. Loves his tennis ball. So now I'm going to teach Rover to go find a live person.
Okay.
What's the process?
Oh gosh, I could talk all day about this.
Good.
All right. Get my chair here.
Because we're going to teach Dwayne how to do it.
Okay. So the dogs come in. They have these qualities that we're looking for. Toy drive is the huge, right? So I think I mentioned earlier that our trained final response is bark alert, right? So we need the dogs to bark. So we start there. So we have a dog. It loves its toy. We put the dog in a harness, show them their toy, get them to bark, reward the dog for barking. We get multiple barks, lots of barks, reward the dog. Okay, great. Now we're going to the next phase. We'll put that live human in something we call a bark barrel. It's a barrel that we can put a lid on, and we teach the dog then, okay, now that person's in there now, it's going to present your toy, bark at that, and we'll give you your toy. So they learn, I just glossed over a ton of steps just then, but that's
3 months.
Yeah,
right?
like that. That's,
exactly.
Yeah. So basically, we train high level. We train the train final response first, because we want the dogs to know that once they get to where they're going, what to do with that. So they're getting passive odor work at that moment. It's not like, okay, you're actually looking for somebody with odor.
Right.
You're like, oh, I need to bark at the thing to get my toy. Great, I can do that. And once we have that nice final trained final response. We'll then take multiple other similar, or exactly, not similar, exactly looking like the same bark barrels, and one will have a person in it and the rest won't. And we'll send the dog in. And ultimately, this is a lot of fun, actually. This is where you see the dog start to learn, and we just, it's so exciting. So the dog will go in, and the first bark barrel they see, they start alerting on it, right? Because they're like, that's what I do. I see the bark barrel, I bark, I get the thing. We let them work that out. Nothing happens. And you see the light switch happen, and the dog's like, what? Wait, it's broken. Wait, what's that smell over there? And they'll stick their nose in, and we'll pay them for odor recognition. They already know how to bark, right?
Sure.
So now we're like, okay, odor recognition, get you your toy. Great. They have had so much repetition and in barking at that bark barrel that the next rep we send at them, they actually look for the odor. It's not maybe next rep, but very quickly after they hit odor, they bark. And they get their toy. And that's how the process starts. So then we start mixing that up. This is all on flat ground. I didn't mention that.
No, I get it, yeah.
We start on flat ground to get all of this behavior into the dog. And once they're proficient in searching a wide area with different bark barrels and they have a nice long alert, we need a minimum of 30-second bark alert. So we need the dog to stay committed in barking for a minimum of 30 seconds. We will we'll now transfer that up to the rubble. So we'll do working with them on a rubble pile, which is very different scent picture, and it's also the tactile nerve issue, right? So now they understand what they're supposed to be doing. Now we're asking them to do it on very unstable terrain, which can affect things and how scent travels and things like that. So we we start with then maybe bark barrel or a contained type scent picture that's familiar to the dog. And the thing that's changed is the footing. What are they standing on? Not flat ground, they're on rubble. And we'll start working them through that process on there. And then we'll move them from a contained type scent picture, and we'll train them to hunt and find with lots of diffuse odor happening. So you need to pick one spot. You need to tell me where the odor could be coming out of anywhere in this area. Your nose is going to tell you what is the most concentrated source of odor, and you're going to bark at that, and you're going to get your toy. And
so give me an example of that, because so if a dog, if there was a disaster and the dog was looking for an odor, there could be different holes, right? There could be rubble, and the person could be over here, and some of it could be seeping out here, but that would be a long way to have to dig. And is that why you're doing it? Because you're concerned that the dog is indicating an odor here, but the person's way over there.
Yeah. So that is, so I'll speak to the handler piece of it in a second, but for the dog piece of it, and there's a reason I'm talking about the handler piece of it, I'll get to it. But the dog piece of it is, in real life, you're not going to have a contained place where odor's only coming out of one spot, right? So the dogs need to be comfortable to make that decision that when they actually hit odor and it's concentrated, they may hit that odor plume, and they're the gradient, right? And they're trying to figure out, okay, it's getting stronger. Oh, it's stronger here. We need them to be able to pull the trigger very quickly when they find the most concentrated source. So if somebody's buried under a bunch of pallets, odor's coming out of everywhere, right? So depending on the scenting conditions, that's what's going to help the dog determine. So our dogs are air scent dogs. And so they use the chemicals or the skin raft stuff in the air to detect odor. The wind plays an important role in that, as does humidity, sunlight, all that good stuff. So, in talking about if the dog alerts on concentrated odor in one spot and the human potentially is really far away, we know that we trust our dogs. They're trained to such a high level that when they're alerting, we know that there is somebody in there, right? So the dog has picked the spot, and they've had so much work in diffuse odor that they're telling us this is the most concentrated source, and we trust that because our nose can't tell.
No, for sure.
We have to trust our dogs and our training, and we do, right? So they're telling us there's somebody right here, that there's odor right here.
Right.
The person could be somewhere downwind or upwind. The handlers then, that's the piece the handler has to get involved in. So my dog's alerting. What is the scenting conditions? What's happening here? Where's the wind blowing? Is the wind blowing in my dog's face? Is the wind blowing from a different direction? That's what's going to tell you what direction you need to delayer, right? So if a person is...
And talk about what that is, delayer, because I think that's important.
Yeah, that's when we bring in the search teams and they bring in their technical equipment to kind of get into the rubble with cameras and things to see if they can see anybody, or if we have heavy equipment, we'll start, safely. They use that term very lightly, or loosely. Removing pieces to try to get to that person. Basically, yeah.
And I think the best visual for the public, for everyday folks, is the Haiti earthquake in 2010 was a real learning point for the teams. But everyone kind of remembers the images of just layer after layer after layer of concrete. It was a lot of the building material that was used in buildings down there. And after the earthquake, the way that their buildings were structured, it created a lot of what they call pancake collapses. And so you had floor falling upon floor, and the diffuse scent that you're talking about, that's how that was kind of created and how it really came to the forefront of realizing we really need to, I think, get better at this across the system, because the scent now, it cannot go through that concrete. Now it's coming out and around. And so a lot of the extractions of survivors from that incident took upwards of 24 hours after the dog could have alerted, or if they used the sound detection and heard someone banging or something like that. However that was pinpointed, the actual extraction process can take a long time after that. And that's why, to Mandy's point, it's really important that the dogs are alerting at the strongest scent source, not necessarily at the victim itself. And so that's for everyday folks. I mean, everyone remembers those images. Same with 9/11. We all remember seeing that rubble pile, if you want to call it that. And so there could be anyone in there. It would take forever for someone to cover that pile. The dogs can do it with their nose very quickly, but the work doesn't end there. That just barely begins, the area that needs to be focused on. Or on the other side of that actually lets us know if the dog doesn't alert, that those crews now can move on to
Yeah.
another area
Yeah.
because there is no survivor there. And in a disaster immediately following, that rescue period is a finite amount of time where it's, logically possible for a human to survive
Right.
before moving into recovery mode, which would be the human remains part of it. So these dogs serve such a great purpose in a lot of ways to either pinpoint where that survivor is or to be able to say, okay, we need to keep moving. There's a lot more ground to cover, quite
Right.
literally.
So that's an important piece that I want to talk about because they're not dual alert dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So the first team will go in, and that team will say, okay, we're looking for survivors, and they'll do their thing and go through. And if they pass through, then how soon afterwards do you send in the B team, which is the remains detection dog, to say, let's see if there's any victims? How does that work?
So it depends on. The task forces are called out, and we have a task force leader and a search team manager, and they make those decisions. So they call us out when they determine we need to. The canine units need to be involved. So they'll send the live find unit out. If they have a second live find dog, they might send that dog as well, just to
Okay.
confirm, right? And then they'll send in, if it's, they'll send in human remains detection. And
Gotcha.
it's interesting that, we as we train both, we train the dogs on the rubble pile with both, right? So, the handlers of live find dogs also need to know what their dogs are going to do when they come across cadaver.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, because just because the live find dogs are trained to have the trained final response, bark alert, live human odor, live person, the handlers also ultimately they're probably going to be victims there. If they think there's live people, there's probably not live people as well. So, right, in a disaster setting. So the handlers that are running their live find dogs need to know what the body language change is for dogs that come across cadaver. So they won't alert on it because that's not what they're trained to do. But the dogs in training have had exposure so that we know what they do when they come across human remains. So they may hook on it and kind of check it out and then move on. And as a handler, I need to know what that looks like with my individual dog. And each dog may do something different, right?
Right.
And then they move on and they continue their search work. But my dog did give me some sort of indication there could be something there, and I'm going to relay that back to my search team. Hey, we cleared this pile. We didn't have any trained final response, but my dog showed some interest in here. You might want to send your cadaver dogs into this area.
So do you decide which dog is going to be a live find dog and which dog is going to be a cadaver dog? And because the scent is very, very different,
Yeah.
right? I mean, people say, well, it's a skin, but it's remains smell very, very differently to the dog. How do you determine who gets to be the cadaver dog? Like, okay, you win the bonus prize, right? Like, is it more high drive to be a cadaver dog?
No.
Or what's low drive?
Same. It's the same.
Okay.
It's the same, and it's just depend on what the need that we have. And our primary is live find, so that our most of our dogs are live find dogs. We've got just a handful of.
I think it's neat though that we've had a couple dogs,
Yeah.
and if I remember, you'll have to correct me, but I believe Paul was, one of those as well. That some dogs don't necessarily like the reward process, with a live human, and they don't want that in your face interaction necessarily.
Oh, wait, you're saying they don't like the live find?
The live find reward, and so I know a couple of dogs we've had that happen though.
Yeah. So in getting further into that, like the live for USAR, Urban Search and Rescue, live find HRD, it's the same dog profile, if you will. So they have to be bold, confident, toy driven, all of that. So it's the same dog that we're looking for.
Sure.
They do all the same tests. It's all the same, except the odor is different. That's the only thing that's different.
Okay.
And to Denise's point, my own personal dog and a couple of other dogs that we've had, they may not like the reward sequence. So, if you can envision, in live find, we have a live human hidden. The dog can't see the person. And when the dog, barks where they think odor is or whatever, a toy is popped out from that victim. That's how we keep that bark alert nice and sharp. And then the hidden victim plays and tugs with the dog. Well, some dogs, that's too much in their face with somebody they can't see. So some dogs don't like that. And so what we tend to find happen is we'll see the dog progress through training very nicely, like they're doing their thing. But over time, that victim reward, where the toys popped out by somebody they can't see, starts to become an aversive. And so they will hunt, they will do all the things, and their body language will tell you, oh yeah, there's somebody there, there's somebody. This is in training scenario, right? Somebody there, somebody there, somebody there. but they won't actually produce their final trained final response because they're like, I don't actually like that reward, but I love to hunt. I love rubble. I love everything about this. I love looking for something with my nose, but I don't really like that. That reward sequence is not I'm not a fan of that. And so that type of dog, my dog, that was his situation. Trying to figure out, like, is that actually what's happening here? Throwing toys on the rubble. Is it foot? Is it tactile? Is the dog nervous about something in the environment? And nope, the dog's great with just a toy and the handler. Okay, well, let's maybe try them on human remains because the reward sequence is totally different.
Talk about the reward sequence.
The reward sequence for HRD or a human remain detection it's handler based. So they find their odor, they produce their trained final response on odor, and the handler rewards the dog. So it's somebody the dog has a relationship with. It's their person, and that person's providing the toy and reward at the source of odor, and it's a big party and they have fun. So it's a very different picture to the dog. If they don't like hidden people screaming in their face and trying to tug with them, they can't see them. So. I'm
fascinated. I would have thought it would be the exact opposite because I would think they would be so happy and they find somebody alive and they get to play tug and they get to is it just the startledness of it or is
it can be.
It is.
Yeah,
right?
it can be the startle. And then, with live humans, the dogs have to train. You talk about odor threshold, right? The dogs have to train with many different decoys or victims, if you will. Because we all smell a little different, right? So they have to get comfortable and they have to generalize victims, and so we set that up for them, and so that's where you start to see dogs. Like if it's always the same person in that barrel or in that hide,
then they're always looking for that one guy.
Yeah, and
right?
and typically it's people in our staff, and so they know these people, and so that problem doesn't show up until we start generalizing victims, and that's when we see it.
So
that makes sense.
I want to talk about that because that's a really interesting piece that I used to always talk about with dogs when I found them in the shelter with behavior problems. So they would say, oh, the dog has a problem with men, or it has a problem with, African-American men, or has a problem with Asian men or something like that. And usually it's because they're not introduced to a various culture of people because dogs see with their nose and then suddenly they're seeing a black guy, and they've never seen a black guy or smelt a black guy, or they've never seen an Indian person, or a person from South America, or a person from Asia. How do you do that? Because each of these people has a different odor. They have a different look. If we were looking for somebody, we'd say, okay, we're looking for, there's an Asian person, there's a woman, there's this or there's that. I don't know if you can even still say that nowadays, but how do you get these various people, because you might be in a situation in a place where there might be people of different ethnicities, and if the dog is always indicating on a Caucasian male,
Right.
It's a flaw for the dog in training, isn't it?
Yep.
So
yeah.
how do you work that out?
Yeah, so we have volunteers that come out and hide for us. We have workshops where we get lots of different people out there. So it's really about building that community of people that will want to hide for us. And so we try to generalize that as much as we can. And then we also have when they go to their task force trainings, there's different people there, so they're always getting new people, and over time that tends not to be an issue. Like we usually will see that in training. If that is going to be an issue, we'll see it in training really early on, and then it's like, okay, we're going to address that. We're going to work on that. We're going to get lots of people out here. A lot of the dogs, it's kind of ironic. They're really resilient and they do a really good job of it. But if we do have a dog that tends to has not an issue. I'm talking separate from the HRD issue where they don't like the reward sequence. But if it's just an odor issue, like, okay, I need to generalize this odor, we'll put a lot of effort into that, and pretty quickly the dogs move past
for
it.
sure. Yeah, it's an easy fix.
Yeah.
Right. But okay, so here's the question of the hour, or the question of the day, maybe. Children. Small children.
Yep.
That's a whole different game,
yes,
right?
Yes, it is.
Okay. See, I got a lot of good questions. Yeah.
I can answer that.
Okay,
please do.
Good. Take one.
So my 5 and 7 year olds have helped with that, even when they were babies. Bring them out in the car seat, and granted, not in the rubble. We were in a diffuse box, and me sitting with them. But to your question about different scents and different people and different types. Another scenario that we found we heard about when they came back from deployment was, what about a mother and baby? So now you have two very distinct scents, but in one single spot.
Yeah.
And how does a dog react to that? That's something that maybe hadn't really been thought about before. And so we try to provide all the different scenarios we can, but ultimately we can't plan for everything
course
as much
not.
as we would
Yeah.
love to have that crystal ball. But it's, teaching them how to learn. They're learning how to learn. And I think that's my favorite part of it, is that they're teaching themselves how to learn each of these things and kind of generalize that. And so, we, like I said, we've used my children, and we can use, different folks that we can just try and generalize as much as we can. But ultimately, we want them to just have that tool in their toolbox, their, imagined toolbox, so that when that handler and that dog step off that bus or that plane, they have something to fall back on that at least is similar to whatever scenario they're facing. And so it's, it's really important. We tell the handlers this all the time. It's not that we're trying to teach you everything here, as nice as that would be. It's we're trying to give you as much of that experience as we can before you go out the door. And, another really neat part of that, that I just want to mention is in, our rubble pile in our Search City area and whatnot, we've also been, toying with the idea and using a scent tubing system where we can pump scent now. So not having to put someone actually into that rubble pile necessarily. They can be sitting in a shed, it looks like a shed, and be pumping their scent into various areas, turning valves and whatnot so that it's coming up in different spots. It allows it to be a lot more versatile. It allows us to set up a much more complicated scenario. Almost most importantly, I would say, is within the buildings that we have, we're also able to then run that scent into things like an electrical outlet or a ceramic toilet, things that as humans we look at and say logically there is absolutely no way anyone could fit there. There is no one, that wall is not thick enough to have a human being in it, yet my dog's alerting on it. And that lesson right there where the handler says, I'm not rewarding my dog because he's false alerting. He's not false alerting. That, there is live human scent, a very strong live human scent coming out of that electrical outlet. In the debrief, now the trainers can say, you need to remember that your dog, the nose knows, and your dog knows, and you need to be paying attention to that. And so lessons like that and finding ways to kind of teach those things across the board are so important. And that's why it's so important we continue to talk with handlers and task forces and folks that are going out the door, because we want to incorporate that when they come back in some way or another, whether it be different types of people or, being able to kind of, it's not about tricking them, it's about teaching them, ways to do that. And that's kind of, the fun of it is really how do we keep getting creative and stay creative in what we're doing on campus. So I just wanted to mention that as well. It's all great. Across the board, all different types of training, scenarios. Right.
Okay. So if, first of all, you guys got to come back. This is a great conversation. And Janet, we're going out there sometime. We're going to do a live from there.
Just let us know.
Yeah,
I mean, seriously, it's just so awesome. Because I'm just always intrigued. I mean, I just love talking about dogs. I don't care what it is. It's just, has this been amazing or what?
I have still 1,000.
Okay, so give me 372. I can do time.
Know, like, what the training day looks like for the dog.
Okay, that's probably a really good question. The train, because people always say that. What's a day look like in your life? And my day is horribly boring.
What does it look like for the dog? And, how many repetitions does he do? What's his reward? What's his correction? I'd like to just hear.
Yeah, like in a nutshell, how would you say the day 7 o'clock? Well, not 7 o'clock, maybe whatever time you get there.
Yeah.
The dogs come out. Let's run through that real quick.
Sure. So I guess I'll start with the dogs are they're tiered kind of like school. So we have our freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior class. Our freshmen are newest in the program. I'm still learning all the foundation stuff. Our seniors tend to be the ones that are next to go out, so they're very well versed in what they're doing. So Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we do search work in the morning. So we'll work the younger dogs on barrels, and we'll work the older dogs up on the rubble or in the train prop, like Denise mentioned, somewhere in a more difficult search pattern. So we do search all morning, and then in the afternoon we focus on the other FSA skills, which is their foundational skills assessment. That's the other piece of their training that they need. We have direction control that we teach them. It's off leash directionals, front, back, left, right, go out, go back, come back, recall, that kind of thing, off leash. We work on agility, off leash agility, climbing over things. It's not fast and furious agility. We don't want that. We want like very confident agility.
Like Jimmy.
Yeah. And then a formal obedience work as well. So that tends to round out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday, we focus pretty heavily on the FSA skills. So there's not a lot of search going on Tuesday, Thursday. We give them a break, even though they would do it all day long.
And so do you have multiple dogs with multiple handlers out at one time?
So we have the training staff out there. We have a group of people. I assign roles for the day, and so we have myself and the canine trainers and support canine operations, training assistants, and canine care specialists. They come out, and depending on what we need, we put them in rubble or we have them run dogs. Just again, it depends on the day. But yeah, we're all out there kind of working dogs.
And how long will one dog be out at a time before you put them in and bring out another dog?
It depends on how quickly they find somebody.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. On Thursday, we had a really nice search morning. We had all of our sophomores, juniors, and seniors out working together. Not at the same time, obviously. We had one dog run at a time. But they did a very, very difficult search problem. But they actually all did a really, really good job. So we were able to get more searches in, So if we did a really long stretch of a search, they're out in the vehicles with us, and then they go out to search, and maybe they get one or two searches and they go back. But yeah, it just depends on how tough we set up the problem, and depending on where they're at in training and what we want to work on, we set up scenarios accordingly.
So it could be 10 minutes, could be an hour?
Yeah, and they'll be out with us and in the vans. That's part of it. I think, even if they're not working, they need to be comfortable being in vehicles, waiting their turn and not losing their mind. We don't want them spending energy doing that. We want them spending their energy working or getting out and doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, even though they're not, they're waiting or they've already run and they're not running at that moment. That exercise of being in the vehicle in their crate, calm, quiet, hopefully. It's hard with search dogs. They like to bark, but, conserving their energy for when we need to bring them out again. That's an important piece of their training as well. So.
Well, and then in between, I mean, that's the formal training part of it. But then in between, we have a canine gym that they're, working on their endurance and strength training, core strength training. And it's not to the point that we're overexerting them.
No,
it's really truly preparing them for kind of that moment of the search training piece of it. Yeah. I mean, they're the Olympic athletes of the canine world in a lot of ways. And even our canine care staff, just getting them in and out of the kennels and just going on walks around campus, hikes, we have hills and whatnot. Every bit of that, every interaction, of course, is an opportunity for them to be learning and be training.
Right.
Yeah. And so I really love, and I'm I have to compliment Mandy and her team and the whole canine operations team, because that entire team works together to help this dog get to the point of where it needs to be at the end. And really truly every moment that they're awake and out is being utilized.
I love it.
It's really neat.
So let's say people want to help. They want to leave money from their will into this organization. How do people get in touch with you? I'm going to put a link in this description below.
Thank
So
you.
if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're just seeing the podcast, go to the YouTube channel once this video's up. But talk about that, because I think that's an important piece. You do an amazing amount of work. You've got great trainers. You've got great dogs. You're saving lives. You're providing one of the most amazing services I think a dog can possibly do. How can we support this work?
Well, thank you for asking that. So searchdogfoundation.org is our website, and that is by far the easiest way. We can also accept check donations via mail, but really online is kind of the best place, not only because you can make a donation there, but also you can learn more about what we do and see what we do. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and you can kind of follow along as these dogs are going through training. Now, we don't provide a full training day every day for every dog. That would be a lot. And Mandy has some other things to do besides live streaming all the time. But we definitely try and share bits and pieces as they go through their journey with us, and then beyond once they're partnered with their handler. That's a whole other piece of it. And so really I love telling the stories of these dogs, and we would love if people can see that and join that and feel that and be part of it.
So searchdogfoundation.org.
Yep.
And now, is there hashtag Search Dog Foundation? Is it at Search Dog Foundation on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff?
Yep.
Okay, I got to go follow you guys. I think it's fantastic. I mean, what about? Do you need people to come in and be hiders?
As we kind of open up, victims, decoys,
victims,
all of the above. But as we sort of open up, yes, we have on our website a volunteer page that folks can enter their information. And of course, being in the rubble is a little different than helping in other ways on campus, and we want to be sure folks are safe. But absolutely, anybody that would like to help can go to searchdogfoundation.org and find that.
Okay, so you can either donate, you can help you can hide in the rubble, or you can maybe go walk dogs or something. There's
possible.
different things. So they got to fill out
Yeah.
an application. There's an application.
Yes, there's
but
a form.
it's an amazing organization. You've been around since.
Since 1996. So this is
1996.
actually our 25th anniversary year
Okay.
this year, which is
That's
pretty
great.
amazing.
Are you gonna have a big party?
I don't know if we have time for a big party
A
the rest
gala
of
or
the year.
something?
I would love to, but I don't know if that's quite going to happen.
Okay.
But we're revisiting all of our milestones on social media.
I'll tell you what I would do. I would do a virtual gala, right? Everybody pays $100 or $500, and then like they don't have to go.
Well,
Because the worst thing, I hate going to events.
yeah, I was going to say that sounds like a great event.
Like the event you don't have to go to, but you can still
Right.
pay and get and
Yeah.
feel good about it. I think
Yeah.
that's a good. Address that with Wilma. I think it's a good idea.
I will bring that up.
I think it's a winner. Okay, so you guys are ladies. I always say guys, a little sexist. Are going to come back at some point. I had a really great time talking to you guys. I'm going to put all the information for Surge Dog Foundation down below. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and thank you for the amazing work you do. I mean, I've known of you guys for forever, and I just love it more and more. And getting to talk to you guys, I mean, it gives me a newfound respect for your work and for the organization. So God bless you guys for what you're doing for our first responders, for people in general.
Thank you very much.
Please
Thank
support-
you for
Pleasure to be
having
here.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So anyway, guys, that is what I would tell you to do. This is a good organization. Skip a cup of coffee, do something, but write a check. At the very least, go check out searchdogfoundation.org and do something for somebody who can't help. There's an organization that gives dogs free of cost to worthwhile organizations, and they're doing amazing work. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. Enough of a shtick on that. So thanks for being here.